what it is, what it do.
It is.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah. It is Tuesday. You guys know what that means. It's Tackle Tuesday.
Okay, with them headphones.
And we're here.
Let me try to untangle this here.
Yep.
There we go.
We were not prepared. It's Tackle Tuesday, and we are here to talk about some more baits. Tony, what are we talking about today?
So today
Your favorite person?
we are talking about crankbaits.
Yeah.
Now, before we talk about crankbaits, I just want to say a couple short things. I obviously missed the drop shot episode, and as I was on my 4-hour drive back from visiting my alma mater
No
VMI
excuses.
this weekend, I listened to the drop shot episode, and I was like, "This is awesome." I wanted to comment on it and stuff. I'm like, "Damn, this isn't live." So definitely some good techniques. I took away a lot from you guys, so that was really
It was a good episode.
kudos to y'all for doing that. For y'all that maybe can't listen live, if you're ever, maybe if your work allows you to listen to podcasts, if you're a driver, you drive over the road, something like that, definitely that is a really awesome time to listen to some of these after the fact, after they're live. I'm going to go back and watch all the episodes when I'm driving to work and stuff like that, just because, you hear stuff twice. Second thing, congrats on the new Ranger. Oh, yes. Somebody converted him to the Ranger team.
Ranger
Yeah.
Malone. We got Ranger Ramon
Ranger Mullen.
and Ranger Malone.
Mm-hmm. We might have to come up with a better nickname for you, but that
Yeah,
works
so
for
I
me.
was actually thinking about Blue Lightning,
Okay.
but, we're going to think of...
We gotta come up with
Paul says,
like some legendary WWE tag team names, and we'll figure something out.
Yeah,
Figure something.
we got to come up with
We'll
something.
get on.
You know what? I should probably put some fish on the deck before I even give it a name. Honestly.
Just let it come to you. Just let it come to you naturally. My
Yeah.
boat doesn't have a name.
It's going to come.
You know what my boat's name is? Bitch. Most of the time, because that's what I call it. I'm gonna take this
Dude,
bitch
I
out.
swear to God, me and Steve have been fishing Johnny for like 5 years together now. And we didn't start calling it Johnny until like 2 years ago. All of a sudden, it was just Johnny. Because I had the nitro at one point for a while, so like it was like he didn't know if I was bringing the John boat to the nitro. So for like storage purposes and stuff like that, he'd be like, Johnny with nitro. And then ever since then, it was just Johnny. But who doesn't call their John boat Johnny? I feel like that is just the most typical shit ever.
The champion doesn't have a name. Its name is usually Whore.
Much like bitch. They're
Yeah.
probably sisters.
Probably.
So, but tonight we are going over crankbaits. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Are we primarily focusing on mid-depth, shallow, or deep crankbaits?
Shallow crankbaits. We are talking about shallow crankbaits, so under 6 feet.
Under 6 feet.
It's kind
Under
of
6 feet.
So I have 3 ranges of crankbaits. I have shallow crankbaits, which are under 6 feet, mid-depth crankbaits, which are like 6 to 12, and then deep crankbaits, which is 12 plus.
That's actually my exact range as well.
So
You say that.
today we're going to talk about shallow crankbaits, various styles, various build types, and we're going to get into the nuances of each one and where you should fish them, how you should fish them, and what they're designed for.
And while you do that, I'm going to make sure I share the post.
Yeah, this is one of my absolute favorite baits right now. Like I have, I definitely have a lot to say and talk about with crankbaits. I really enjoy throwing a crankbait. A crankbait is one of the most universal baits that you can have in your arsenal, period, bar none. Complete different kinds. So we're talking about shallow crankbaits today, but you have different types of shallow cranks. You have square bills. You still have your round
square
bills,
bills, round bill,
flat
coffin bills,
sides.
flat sides. There's a lot of different classifications there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different depth ranges. I mean, we classify them all as shallow cranks, but there's a big difference between fishing, 2 to 3 feet of water and fishing 5 to 6 feet of water. But there's shallow cranks that cover them all. Just FYI, we will not be covering the DT6. I consider that a mid-depth crankbait, so not a shallow crankbait, but
Interesting.
it works very well as a shallow crankbait.
But it's not a shallow crankbait.
Yeah, it's in that range. I mean, if you throw it on 10-pound line, you can get a DT6 down to like 8 feet. So I consider it more of a mid-depth crankbait.
Sure.
That's not to say that you can't take a mid-depth crankbait and fish it shallow. The one thing you remember about crankbaits is you can control how deep a crankbait goes very easily by changing line size. So you can take a crankbait that runs, say you're fishing, 3 feet of water, you want to throw a bigger profile, like a 2.5. So big square bill. This square bill is the 6 cents. This runs 5 to 6 feet. Normally, if you're throwing on like 12-pound line, throw it on 20. Now it's a 4-foot crankbait.
Yeah.
So in general, as far as depth goes, you'll lose for every 2 pounds of line. It really depends on line diameter. So I'm just generalizing with line weights. But if you go from 12 to 14, you'll lose a foot. Go from 14 to 17, you'll lose another foot. Go from 17 to 20, you'll lose another foot. So very generalized, and it really depends on what kind of crankbait you're throwing. But
Who's throwing crankbaits on 20-pound fluorocarbon?
No,
everybody but you.
everybody but me, apparently.
I have a very specific time when I do that. actually.
So I'm always throwing, like I said, I'm using the line size to control depth. So
Okay. So is it specific to depth or structure?
a little bit of both. I mean, if I'm throwing it into structure, I probably want it to run a little shallower anyway. So I'm going to throw it on heavier line. Plus, I need to get those fish out of there. So, one, I always throw crankbaits on fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
I
Always,
will not throw
yeah.
a crankbait on anything else. I
Straight
used to throw them on
fluorocarbon,
mono.
We can agree on that.
Now, I will say if you're not using a crankbait specific rod, like a moderate action rod, then you might want to use mono just for the stretch, because you're not getting the bend in the rod. So you can throw it on mono especially if you're like a co-angler who
That's going to
doesn't-
completely change your water column.
Not really.
You don't think so?
Nah, it does a little bit. So
Talking like maybe 3
You
or 4
won't-
inches.
you won't get it as deep with mono. So like 12-pound fluoro compared to 12-pound mono, about 6 inches difference. So mono will be
Okay.
about 6 inches shallower, but it's way more important to be able to hook those fish and land those fish, and you need either some stretch in the line or give in the rod. So especially for somebody who might be a co-angler and can't take 30 rods like I do and have crankbait specific rods. If you're throwing a crankbait on say you're throwing a square bill on just like a 7-foot medium heavy, which can be a relatively stiff rod, you probably want mono. And mono can double. Like we'll talk about line some other time, but
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with throwing mono. Fluorocarbon will give you so much more feel.
Yeah.
So you can feel everything that the crankbait's hitting.
I have nothing spooled with mono.
I
At
have
all.
I have 2 rods. They're both topwater rods.
My biggest
It's a big popper rod and a little popper rod.
There you go. Yeah.
interesting that you talked about depth as being your biggest factor for line size with crankbait. Mine's actually water clarity. That's when I determine a lot. I'll change baits before I change lines when it comes to what depth I want to target. And the reason for that is I'll be very, very specific, and I'll give up some juice here because it's a springtime bite on kind of winger. There's no tournament, so who cares? Last year, so it was spring 2021, myself and Travis Metz and Team Outcast went out a couple times and on Conowingo in the spring and the April and May months. And I'm not going to say we really knocked them out, but we had 15 to 18 pounds on our best days. That largemouth. Oh, it was so much fun.
Was that the day?
When we went out?
Yeah.
No, we went out in the fall.
May is such an incredible. I've had multiple 20-pound bags
Yeah.
on Conowingo.
And we never caught a smallmouth, never. But we threw mostly crankbaits. And I will tell you that because the water was stained and the water was nasty and gross, I threw my crankbaits on 15 to 17 pound on a medium heavy, just because I felt more confident in being able to aggressively bang it up on those pieces of wood, knowing that the line, visibility of the line wasn't an issue, and still being able to kind of really lean into this fish. And I actually never lost a fish. That was on BX Brett, by the way, my favorite crankbait. So for me, it's about water clarity. If I'm targeting a specific depth, I'll change the crankbait before I change the line. If I have a crankbait rod that's got 10 pound on it, and I'm throwing a 4-foot diving crankbait, and I want to get it to 3, I won't go to a rod with 12 or 14. I'll just apply another crankbait on for the most part.
Sometimes though you can't.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Certain crankbaits have certain action and have certain depth. So like you have to change the line size because that might be the deal. I am the opposite. I will throw 12-pound line into anything and have all the confidence in the world of being able to get fish out.
I have no problems throwing 12-pound fluorocarbon on a crankbait
That's usually what I
and
start
feeling
with.
confident.
That's what I start with.
12 or 10, that's all I have tied onto a crankbait.
I don't throw 10 on a crankbait. I usually almost always throw 12. The only time I'll throw 10 is if I need to get a little extra depth. So if I'm throwing like a DT8, which is one of my favorite crankbaits, and I'm usually more concerned with depth when you get into like mid-depth crankbaits. Shallow crankbaits, I'm just banging them on the bottom. But
When I'm in super clear water is generally when I'll attempt to go to a 10.
so, funny story, or nifty tidbit for mid-depth crankbaits. A DT8 on 10-pound line, you can get to almost 12 feet in the same profile as a DT6.
Okay.
Which is the best profile
Pretty much, yeah.
ever.
So let's talk a little bit about baits, and we'll start with the shallowest, and that's going to be your square bills. I mean, that's what everybody thinks when they think shallow crankbaits.
That's what I think.
You're thinking square bills. And what's a square bill? So here's a very special crankbait. This is made by Tyler at UMA. Notice the teeth marks in the back.
Oh, yeah.
This is a fire crankbait.
It's been chewed.
This thing has caught a lot of fish. But he doesn't make this size anymore. So Tyler, if you're watching, the original Pudge, you need to start making this guys.
Bass and Beer Radio backs up that statement.
So this is the UMA Pudge. This is one of my favorite square bills. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera so that we can see it. Yep. So they're called square bills because they have a square bill. So what are we fishing square bills on? Well, a square bill is made to deflect off cover. So whether it be rocks, wood, doesn't matter. It's made to hit. And when these corners, hold it up here a little higher, when those corners hit that piece of cover, it's going to deflect and kick sideways. And when you get that deflection, that's when you're going to get your bites. Are you going to get bites when you're just like steady reeling it in? Yeah. But most of your bites are going to come when that bill contacts cover and deflects. Oof. So square bills, that's what everybody thinks of for the shallow crankbaits. That's the first thing that comes to people's minds. So I fish square bills from wintertime to early spring.
Kyle has a very valid question.
Yes, Kyle, I do put hot dog pieces on the hooks. I usually run 6 hot dog pieces, or actually 5 hot dog pieces and 1 piece of Slim Jim. Slim Jim is key.
Oh, dude,
Macho
Paul
Man Randy
just
Savage
dropped
Slim
some
Jim.
juice on the Slim Jim.
Yeah.
Oh,
So for your square bills, you have a variety of sizes, you have a variety of depths, but they're all made to do the same thing. That's deflect off cover. So when you're fishing a square bill, typically, as I was saying, I fish a square bill on 12 to 20 pound line. And a lot of that depends on the depth and the cover. If I'm throwing it into some real gnarly stuff, and that's what I'm fishing that day, I'm going to go with a little bit heavier line. 1, because I want it to run a little shallower, and 2, because I want to make sure that I can get those fish out of there. So if I know I'm fishing real shallow, which we do a lot here with our tidal waters, where we're fishing a lot of 2.5 to 3 feet.
Yep.
3 feet max.
Daily.
All the time, and a lot of your square bills run 4 to 5 feet.
Yeah.
So you want to you can get away with that heavier line because you don't really need them to go that deep. Heavier line, throw it into more junk, get it out of there. Hell, a 20 pound line, these Gamakatsu hooks will, you can bend them out. And $18 crankbait, you want to get that back. So 20 pound line is I use a lot around here, but as I was mentioning, it's more controlled depth. So I was at controlled depth with my line size, and I'm going to throw a square bill into shallow cover, not grass. I do not throw a square bill into grass. I think there are better options to throw into grass.
I think when it comes to grass, there is a lot of option. I'm sorry, there is not a lot of options
I'm
when it
gonna
comes
cover-
to crankbaits.
I'm going to cover a really good option, give away a little juice, a little bit.
I mean,
After we talk about the square bills here.
anything when you put in my mind anything with treble hooks and grass,
I fish
I
crankbaits.
just put it away right away.
I fish crankbaits in grass a lot, especially in the spring.
I'll fish grass edges and everything, but if you have floating grass, chopped up eelgrass and stuff, things
that's
that are going to completely foul up all the time.
Totally agree. I'm
Yeah.
talking more like springtime milfoil. So
Yes, absolutely.
when you have milfoil coming up, I will fish a crankbait in milfoil until they won't freaking bite it anymore,
Yeah.
because it gets a crankbait in milfoil just gets bit. Especially that early milfoil that's first, when it's just starting to come up, it's not quite topped out. But a square bill will tend to collect grass on the bill. And that's why I don't throw a square bill in there. Now, that being said, one of these exact crankbaits right here, the maker was on the back of my boat one day and wore me out throwing a square bill in grass. So I won't say it doesn't work. It's just I don't have confidence in it.
Okay.
In fact, it was.
But was he clearing it off every freaking cast?
So it was a real high tide, and we had about, I don't know, 18 inches, 2 feet of water over top of it. He was reeling it down into the top of the grass and just snapping it free. And his second cast, he caught a 4-pounder. That was also the day I almost killed him. But
I remember that day.
Good story.
yeah, it was. It's interesting. So
We still got to get Tyler on here.
So there's a couple of crankbaits. So this is the UMA Pudge. This is the Little Pudge. So big size difference. This is like a 1.0 crankbait. Like if you're the Strike King really came out with that, Strike King and Lucky Craft came out with that like 1.0, 2.0 size ratings for your square bills. So if you're familiar with that, this is like a 1.0 size. This is like a 2.0. So this is like in between a 2.5 and a 1.5. So for example, here's a 1.5 size crankbait.
Is that the RC 1.5?
Of course not.
I feel like it's the RC 1.5.
That is. No, this is an Excalibur.
Oh, okay.
Devion.
We'll get into the other square bills here in a second.
1 second. Devion, the boat is sweet, bro. I appreciate you asking about it. Give me a call a little bit later on, and we'll definitely talk about some more. I'm going to go over some details on it a little bit later on in the show after we get through some baits, but stay tuned and I'll get you some details, or give me a call afterwards.
So as we've said, UMA square bill. This is probably the best square bill I've ever thrown for fishing wood. It comes through wood like a dream.
The deflection rate is insane.
It is
In
crazy.
All of the UMA products.
So one thing that I do that I want to point out, and you can see it on this, I almost always upgrade my hooks on crankbaits. So I use a short shank 1X strong Gamakatsu round bend almost all the time. I do not use triple grips. I hate triple grips. Can't stand them. You'll rarely see a bait. The only bait that I have out here that has triple grips on it is the 6 cents, and that's because it came out of
I
factory.
think Tyler rigs all his stuff up with Owner ST, doesn't he?
I'm not sure what he's using now. So these are the factory hooks. They don't look like owners. So
What are those right yonder?
So
Those
you
are
like a
some-
thicker hook then, is what you're saying, Paul.
yes. So that's my favorite crankbait hook. I throw it on all my crankbaits up to 10 XDs. I just throw a lot bigger ones on those.
Mhm.
They're too hot on those.
Now your hook size can also control some of your depth and stuff like that, right?
Not really.
No?
So hook size doesn't have a lot of impact on depth, but it does have a lot of impact on your hookup ratio. So you want to run as big of hook as you can. Particularly, like you want, or ideally, you want a hook that will not hook itself.
Okay.
So this will just barely do that. But
You
ideally,
ever
you
run
want
a
to run
smaller hook in the front and a larger one in the back?
I don't do that because my OCD doesn't let me. I have to.
My
have it
OC,
myself.
yeah.
But I run as big of a hook as I can without it being able to, really foul up a lot.
Mhm.
So this is number 4 that I have on these. And yeah, it can, but fishing it doesn't hang up a lot. If I was to throw like a number 2 on this, like KVD does, you might run into that issue. But that's also why he throws short shank hooks. So if you notice the KVD triple grip, I think it's the Mustad Elite triple grip, which is the one he throws, the needle point. They are a super short shank hook so that you can throw a bigger hook. So the bigger hook gap you have on a crankbait, the better you're going to hook up.
Right.
So in the square bill category here, like I said, this is the UMA. This is my favorite square bill for wood. I don't like it for rock, mostly because I don't like a circuit board bill for rock.
It tears them up.
It's not that it tears them up. I have certain circuit board, like a Spro Little John, that I fish. It's not that it tears them up. I don't like the way that it deflects off rock. I think it's too hard.
I was going to say that I think the vibration that is given off by the deflection of a plastic bill to a circuit board bill is completely different.
Yeah,
Do you throw any metal bill crankbaits?
I do not.
So it's like it's kind of an old school thing, right? Like some of the first crankbaits that came out were metal bills. That's
Yeah,
You can
if you
still
want to
get
go
it.
back to go back to the mud bug and stuff like that,
Mhm.
then you'll see metal. So example number 2, I'll show this one because you guys can't get it anymore. So this is a Excalibur XCS 100.
I'll buy that on eBay tonight.
If you want to pay $30 for a crankbait,
oh,
go
we'll
for
pay
it.
$200 for one bait. I've seen it.
Hey.
I mean, if you want to pay that much, I got like 6 of them in that box down there. So this is an Excalibur XCS 100. Another one of my favorite crankbaits. This one runs a little bit deeper than a UMA. So I can get this one down 4 or 5 foot, where the UMA runs about 3. So if I'm targeting something a little bit deeper and I still want that same size profile, I'm going to go with something like this. I'm also going to go with this for rock because of the plastic bill. I like a plastic bill on rock. I don't know why. It might just be a confidence thing, but I feel like a plastic bill comes over rock better. It gets hung up less. I just like a plastic bill for rock.
You think the bill has something to do with the
think
bait
so.
actually getting caught? I feel like most of the time it's the hooks that get stuck with stuff.
Well, I think it's the way it deflects.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
So if you're coming, I think the circuit board bill just deflects too hard off the rocks. So when it deflects too hard, it kicks sideways, and then where are your hooks?
Right.
Can you play the video? Because now that he says that, that's a great point. When you look at the video that we took of the UMA lures, the sideways deflection is actually like huge thing.
It is a sideways deflection.
Yeah, you're gonna get. And that's one thing that
I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think,
Yeah.
like you're saying, your hooks are just in a different position. Whereas when it's deflecting straight down, it's protected by that bill. Whereas when it's sideways, there's nothing really preventing the hooks from getting.
well, a lot of it's bill shape too. So like if I was throwing a different model crankbait,
Kevin Peon Parsons.
so for example, here is another UMA crankbait. This is the original wedge, hand carved, as all his baits are. Very beautiful, custom painted to like old school. So if you look at the shape of the bill here, notice that it's got that little bit of round to it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't deflect as hard off the rocks.
It's a much more narrow bill.
Well, that's partially because it's a flat sided.
Well, because of the flat sides, right?
A little bit different action that you're getting out of that with the shape of the bill, but the deflection off of that is a little bit different. And I'll throw that in rock all day.
It seems like it would kind of roll maybe a little bit different having
So these don't deflect hard. These because of it being such a narrow profile and flat side, it's got a very tight wobble. So when it deflects, it's just gonna kind of kick to the side
Mm.
a little bit. But it comes through rock very well.
Throw that in the fall time a lot, or is that more, when you throwing that bait? Springtime?
Yeah, springtime, fall.
See, I'm a huge flat-sided crankbait guy.
I love flat-sided crankbaits.
Like, other than that late spring, early fall time frame, you'll almost always catch me throwing a flat-sided crankbait. I just have confidence in it.
It's also good when fish are really pressured.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so like Conoway, like for example, Conoway Go. So some other things in the cat. So plastic body crankbait versus balsa body crankbait. Anybody know what the difference is?
Say again one more time.
Plastic versus balsa.
I know also you can't slap it on the water.
That is true. You never slap a balsa bait on the water to clear the grass off of it. It will break.
Yep. Your OG crankbaits from Rapala that are really popular right now, those will break. I've done it.
I have split a ton of DT6s.
Sucks, doesn't it? It's horrible.
So the biggest difference between a plastic body crankbait and a balsa body crankbait is the float rate.
Mm-hmm.
A balsa crankbait will float up much faster than a plastic crankbait.
I think it has a lot to do with the deflection rate on the bait as well, though.
It does.
Big
So that
time.
causes it to deflect different. It causes it to have a different sound profile in the water. So these are all things that you got to take into consideration for when you're throwing them. Am I going to go into when you should throw each one?
If you were watching that video, at one point, when the crank hits the chair, the very first thing you see is it stops
And then it's just,
and just rises and then just takes off.
So if you make that same video with a plastic crankbait, you'll see it when it hits. Instead of going like this, like that, like Tyler's did, it'll
Mhm.
hit and it'll slow flip.
And they kind of shimmy a little bit more too. I've noticed the plastic ones seem to shimmy.
All depends on the bait.
Just slightly, yeah, true. But like maybe just slightly more than a balsa bait. They kind of like shimmy a little bit more. And this is I don't throw crankbaits nearly enough, but I would say you can fish a balsa crankbait slightly more aggressively. You can fish a plastic crankbait because what I'm saying is you can crank it down. And let's say you let it pause for half a second. That bait's going to rise that much more in half a second versus a plastic crankbait.
I actually fish a plastic crankbait way more aggressively than I fish
Really?
a balsa. Usually, if I'm throwing a balsa crankbait, it's because I want that that balsa action, which is a little more. A plastic crankbait has a much wider, crazier,
Right. Well, you have
crazier action,
you
but-
have knockers and stuff in the plastics where your balsa wood crankbaits are all solid wood.
That's just hooks.
Or okay, hollow plastic, whatever you want to call it.
I will.
You have a solid balsa wood crankbait compared to a hollow plastic crankbait.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about actually. So, give me 1 second here, and I'm just going to cover another shallow crankbait. So this is the Rapala BX Brat.
My favorite.
That's one of Tony's favorite crankbaits. This is the BX Brat 3.
Mm-hmm.
This crankbait is money if you're fishing shallow wood. Like, and when I say shallow, I'm talking like you're fishing like stuff you would normally throw like a spinnerbait in because it's so shallow, like a foot and a half deep.
Yep.
I'll throw this in that water because on like 17-pound line, it only runs like 2 feet deep.
Oh, yeah. It's a monster. It's a beast.
It's pretty cool. The only problem with these is you have to fish them slow. If you fish them fast, they'll blow out.
Yes.
And it's
Right.
because of the bill being so small. You have to fish them kind of slow.
Sideways.
Yeah, they'll just blow out and go sideways.
I have one specific color that I like on that BX Brat, and it is so used now that it sinks. It's that waterlogged. That's how much I've used that specific crankbait.
Oh, Paul's going for something. Here we go. I'm going for a beer.
Is this like a frog's paw where you have 1,000 of them, but you only use 3?
No,
You use
I-
all your crankbaits.
I throw crankbaits a lot.
I think Paul's a crankbait master over anything else.
Is it that one?
No, it's not that one. It looks more like a.
Is it that one? No.
It's okay. I want you to think of the old.
Is it that one?
Yes. Yes.
I knew I had it in there somewhere.
That's
I just
the
took it out.
one. That's the one.
I have quite a few BX Brats. I do like them. I'm a big Rapala fan, so I fish a lot of Rapala baits.
And I
So-
will say that the Rapala brand was falling off a little bit in terms of crankbaits. It seems like they've kind of regained themselves with the BX Brat and with the OG, especially the OG. I've had some really good days with the OG recently.
I got 21.29 pounds of smallmouth on an OG.
That the 6 or the 4.
The 6.
The 6. That's a
That-
bad little bait.
That
That is a bad little bait. Like I remember the first time I threw that up on Wingo, summertime, but I was on a bite up at the creek, we'll call it, and it was a sure shot. You could go up there and whack them. And I actually went up there. I didn't know that there were like 2 open tournaments that day, so I wasn't going to go sit in the creek and bust up everybody's shit.
one right there.
Yeah, that's the
That's
shit.
That's a cold water killer right there.
That's got the original hooks on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I was gonna
I like
go
the
up
hooks.
there, and I wasn't gonna bust up those guys' fish. I just didn't want to, be like that. So I went into unventured territory. It was actually the first time I ever went up into the rocks, and I whipped my OG6 around. and
That
it was
OG6
on.
around rock is
Now
freaking
I
ridiculous.
didn't blast them by any stretch, but I caught a bunch of fish.
We'll
and it
talk
was-
about that.
It was very cool. Like it was awesome just to go.
We'll talk about the OG when we
Lots
get
of
into
confidence
when we
in
get
that.
into some of the when we get into like round ones.
Bathroom real quick.
So
Broke the seal.
So we talked about like a 1.0 size and a 1.5 size. Then you have like a 2.5 size. So a little bit bigger profile. I'm going to throw this. I throw a 2.5 in the fall almost exclusively, because in the fall the shad's a little bit bigger.
Yep. The bait fish is bigger.
Your bait fish is bigger. You figure they spawned in the early summer. By the time the fall rolls around, your bait fish are a little bit bigger. The bass are trying to feed up. They're trying to get a little bit bigger meal. So this is a 6 cents Crush 100, which is a 2.5 size, in a very sick paint job. This is like my favorite paint job of any crankbait. Rarely throw it, but
It's like the Mega Bass Sexy Shad, Sexy French Pearl.
Sexy French. Yeah, it's almost exactly like Mega Bass Sexy French Pearl, which is my favorite jerkbait color. So that's why I like that. So the other class of square bills would be silent versus rattles. So I don't know if you guys can hear this, but so you have like a one knock sound on that. Oh, I don't have my sorry, wrong crankbait.
That was a completely different tone, though.
Well, it's because it's a 1.5 versus a 2.5.
Still, take that into consideration when you're talking about. That's why there's so much versatility in crankbaits. Earlier today, or earlier in the week, hey, what are we going to talk about this week? Oh, let's talk about crankbaits. Man, I feel like crankbaits is going to be like a 1 to 3 part series because you got shallows, you got mids, you got deeps.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to crankbaits that it is insane. And like I said, as soon as we began this episode, if you don't have a crankbait tied on throughout the entire year, I think you're simply missing bites because it is one of the most versatile baits that you can.
Depends on where you're at. Like
A lot of
if we're
where I
like
fish-
around here,
Yeah, a lot of where I fish, you can't throw it.
I don't
If
throw a
you're fishing
crankbait.
like,
But if I'm fishing like the lake,
in
I
the
wasn't
forbidden
crankbait
zone and
on.
everything like that, you can
True,
throw it away.
yeah.
With it. There is places that you can still fish it.
I'll
You
throw
can
it
fish
on
it back
wing.
in the quarry.
I'll throw it on wing.
Here's the other sound. Yeah, so you'll hear. That's more of like your traditional rattle sound.
That's my favorite crankbait, the RC.
This is a Lucky Strike, not a Lucky Craft though.
Wow.
Still an RC though. Still a Rickland design. So you have that. You have silent, no sound, and then you have like a one knock sound. So I throw a 9 times out of 10. I throw a silent crankbait.
Yeah,
I don't like rattles in my crankbaits unless one, there's a lot of bait around because I want that crankbait to stand out. So sound profile.
Makes sense.
And 2 is the water sturdy.
Yep. I was
Water's
gonna say
dirty.
same, which is usually in the spring.
Springtime or fall, you can have dirty water. I like a crankbait. Yes, you are, Tyler.
Pang, pause, post prison.
Let me pick one of those back up. So the UMA Pudge is the best crankbait on the market. Like I said, it is my favorite square bill crankbait for fishing wood. Comes through wood better than any other crankbait. Yes, rattles do call in the big cats. That's probably one of the reasons I don't throw them.
You know what? Now that Dustin said that, I'm
Just
thinking about all the time I've caught catfish on a crankbait, and it's so true. It's horrible. But continue.
And yes, Martin, I know Booyah makes the Excalibur, and it is pretty close, but the paint jobs aren't as good. And that's as far as the crankbait and the action. I have both. The action is really good on the Booyah, but the paint jobs aren't as good as the Excaliburs were, and that annoys me. So that's square bills. So we cover square bills. Square bills are my go-to for like super shallow. Like if I'm fishing super shallow, normal cover, I'm usually going to throw a square bill first. Now we can also fish other types of crankbait shallow as well. So there's other classifications of square bill. Oh, before I get away from square bills, just in general with crankbaits, it's very important to have a variety of colors to match the bait that the fish are eating. So you can have like a bluegill color. This is a very, very good bluegill color.
It's striking one point.
That's a really good looking bluegill color.
It's not.
That is a Lucky Craft, and that is the best bluegill color on the fucking market.
You don't like the
That's a
striking.
sweet
Do you-
bluegill color.
Any striking crankbaits at all?
No, I'm not going to say to the secret. I can't say it.
Yeah, the Mega Bass.
The secret go color is like
Dude,
one of
you
my
and
favorite
Megabass.
freaking.
That is, to me,
Dude, look at some of the freaking gill colors from Megabass, and they're absurdly blue.
to me, that is,
But dude, that is a fire
what's
ass
the
gill
best
color.
bluegill color that I've.
I'll agree.
So you need a bluegill color.
It's got that little bit of orange on the stomach. It's nice.
You need a shad color. So whether it be like your sexy shad or like a white color, this is a UMA crankbait that Tyler painted for me, which is a copy of an old Lucky Craft color that they don't make anymore. But it's very similar to like sexy shad. So you need a shad color, you need a bluegill color, and you're going to need some crawl colors. And crawl colors can vary greatly.
Yes.
So this is one that Tyler painted. This is a sick crawl color. So
I like that a lot.
that shows up pretty good on there. Let me put it up here so it shows up a little better.
I'm kind of partial when it comes to crawl. I love that crawl color. I mean,
So
all
actually,
Tyler's
it's
paint
funny,
is
you
sick.
think of 9 times out of 10 when I'm throwing a crankbait, it's usually a crawl color because I throw it a lot in the spring.
So
Yeah,
here's here's my thing with that though. Like I throw a specific type of crawl color in the springtime, and I'll throw something like this like green pumpkin crawl. I'm gonna throw that more in like the fall. So I'm
when
gonna
they're
change.
going back into that transition zone of when they're turning colors again.
Well, not really when they're turning colors. It's just that in the fall. So
I think that matches the hatch more in the fall than in the springtime when those.
yes, exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
So in the fall, it matches the crawfish. And when the water starts to get cold, they start to eat crayfish again. So they transition from shad into crayfish. So I'm going to throw more of this like green pumpkin-y, more like a natural crawl. Now in the springtime, red. You got to have a red crankbait.
if you don't, you're dumb.
I mean,
Or a
red
spinner, or a spinner
orange.
bait.
So like an orange color like that, something bright like that in the springtime, there's a strike thing for you, Tony.
Sorry, I was distracted by a Facebook post.
So-
Somebody catching fish. My bad.
So you got to have your 4 basic colors, or your shads, your bluegills, your crawdads, and what I like to call like your shock colors. So you're like your high visibility colors, like your chartreuse.
Shock colors.
I call it shock, like a shock, like it's something that's not natural. There's no bait out there that's that color.
Yeah.
But it stands out. So it, for
It's a
example,
reaction bite in a way.
like this 6 Sense citrus shad. It is bright chartreuse with a blue bag.
Nothing
There-
looks like that.
Actually, this is called blue trees. I'm sorry. Got the color wrong. That's what I call like your shock color. So especially in our tidal waters where you have dirty water. Fix that. When you have dirty water, these are the colors that I throw the most. The color that I throw the most in, on the Upper Bay, on the Potomac, is just chartreuse blackback. Now, if the, I usually let the water clarity dictate that. If it hasn't rained for a while and we have pretty clear water, or we're back in like the forbidden zone where the water stays pretty clear,
Forbidden.
then I'm gonna go with something a little more natural. In like a white, if it's overcast, if it's bright and sunny out, I might go with something that's a little more translucent.
Yep.
But you're really just trying to match the hatch, and not really. You don't have to match the hatch exactly. You don't have to have a perfectly like picture image of the shed. You really just need a basic color profile, because if you think about it, you're reeling a crankbait so fast by their head, they're just getting a glance of it. So,
Right.
They're just catching like a glimpse of the chartreuse, or, sometimes you'll have like a natural color that has like a little chartreuse on the belly. You're just getting that flash of color.
I
And that
do
flash
think
of
they can
color-
key in on those things, though. I definitely think they can.
So
I tend to think it's more presentation. That presentation is more important than very specific color. Now, again, like if they're feeding on shad, you want to be throwing a shad color. Something that's close to that's pretty close to what it is. But I mean, if they're eating shad, you can throw a white crankbait and do just as well.
So I don't want to transition the conversation necessarily right now.
Martin,
However,
be quiet.
I do want to ask,
Shut up, Martin.
specifically when it comes to these shallow depth crankbaits, when do you change it for smallmouth versus largemouth?
As far as like what I'm throwing,
Maybe
Or-
colors, things like that. And the reason why I just showed Chad my phone is I actually sent Chad, so not to hijack the conversation, but the best day I've ever had with Kyle Wingo was on crankbaits, smallmouth. And I actually have the video. We'll probably post it because it was from last year. And again, it is what it is. But I sat in the same spot, made the same cast for just cast after cast after cast, just whacked the shit out of them. I mean, in a 5-minute video, I think I caught 4 or 5 fish. And a couple of them were nice, anywhere from that 2.5 to 4 pound class fish. And it was on one specific crankbait. And I actually, the only one I had, of course, I didn't retie because I'm catching them every other cast. So I just broke off. And
of course.
then again, there you go.
So it works.
So Chad's going to put these pictures up. And I wanted to make sure that we do touch on the smallmouth aspect of crankbaits,
So-
because I think it's underutilized a little bit. Because we kind of,
I throw crankbaits for smallmouth a lot.
it's so much fun. It's such
And
a fun bite.
I honestly,
Of course, you didn't send the picture of me and you smoking them.
I use
catch some
the
crankbaits that day.
So I use the same mentality for smallmouth that I do for largemouth. What are they feeding on?
Mhm.
Are they feeding on shad? Are they feeding on, are they feeding on bluegills? Are they feeding on crayfish? And I'm going to match my crankbait to what they're feeding. Now, smallmouth, you do like, I will throw my color or my water clarity. I'm a little more relaxed with like, it's super clear. I need to be throwing a supernatural color, because bright colors, smallmouth love bright colors.
So do you think colors are
Yeah.
important when it pertains to smallmouth?
I do. Smallmouth are way more of a sight feeder.
So do you think that your color options, would you say, excuse me, for smallmouth, the color selection is easier, bright color, shad pattern, or would you think that like a specific color is always better?
Same thing. Shad pattern.
Right.
Crayfish pattern. I don't overthink it. If I figure out, okay, they're eating crayfish, I'm going to throw crayfish pattern. If they're, now I might have to go through a couple of different colors to find out what they're eating. Or if I look at, a good thing to do is look in your live well. If you're fishing a
See what they're
tournament,
spitting
see
up.
what they're spitting
Smallmouth
up.
always spit shit up. all the
Right.
time.
They're always spitting up. Are they spitting up shad? Are they spitting up, watch the side of the boat. Like if you're not keeping them, I'm sure, you fish for smallmouth enough to see that, they'll spit up. If they're eating shad, they'll spit them up on the side of the boat.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
all
they'll-
the time.
yeah,
Almost
they'll
every
just throw it
single
up.
fish. Like it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So then okay, well they're keying in on shad. I need to be throwing a shad color. So colors on crankbaits, I try to simplify it to, what is the fish eating? What's the predominant forage? And this goes for not just the Upper Bay, any body of water. Predominant forage. and then water clarity.
Mhm.
So those are my two, keys. So now, if they're eating crayfish and the water is dirty, then I might just throw like a chartreuse crawl pattern, something like that. But I'm still throwing a crawl pattern. I'm not going to change just because. Let me see if I have a chartreuse crawl in here somewhere. I don't think I brought that box with me. Oh, yep, there's one. Okay, yeah.
There's another crankbait box.
I have like 700 crankbaits. I mean, not all in the boat at the same time. I think I counted them out to like 700 crankbaits. I have a problem.
But that you have in your possession right now,
You need to go to rehab.
700 crankbaits.
Yeah, I own like
700.
700
Do they make rehab for fishing addiction?
I hope not, because then we're all
So,
in it.
if I know they're feeding on crayfish and the water's dirty, I might throw, like a bright chartreuse crawl pattern, but it's still going to be a crawl pattern.
Sticking
So Martin
rod
has an
down in the
interesting
water
point.
and
So-
crank digging.
I will say,
If you had to stick your rod in the water, you're fishing the wrong crankbait.
so that was definitely a thing when I fished that particular time of year in that particular spot. Is there was one specific log or two that had, because everything up there moves, and there was one log that I had found. I scanned it and I seen some fish on it. I actually seen a little bit of fish. Cast to it. First crankbait, I threw a square bill. Wasn't hitting the log. Nothing. So
What's
tied
up,
on
Pete?
the- Tied on the 3, not maybe it wasn't a 3XC. I think it was a 1.5. So it dove to that 6-foot range, but it had a round bill. A round bill 1.5. And it started hitting the log, and every time it would hit the log, it was just hold on to the rod because here it comes. I want to send you the video,
So-
Chad. Maybe we can plan one here. Because
So we talked
What-
about square bills.
1 second.
So we talked about square bills. We've talked about color. Probably should have talked about color first because color is just one of those universal things. It doesn't matter what kind of crankbait I'm throwing. The color really is kind of the same. Until we get into like deep diving crankbaits, my color selection is totally based off of what they're eating. But so we talked about square bills. We've talked about color. Let's talk about some of the other bills that you have.
Hey, thanks, Pete. Appreciate it, brother. Hey, we just want to say that we're thinking about you and Rob tonight, man. You're in our thoughts and our prayers. But
That's funny, Mark.
we watched together. No,
What
Okay, so different bill profiles. So the other two that we're going to talk about are coffin bill. So this is a coffin bill. It's more like a coffin bill. Usually a coffin bill has the corners.
Okay, so it's like the coffin bill is like coming up in a triangle form
Yeah.
almost, and then
Usually so this isn't a very good example of a coffin bill. Usually a coffin bill has like these corners cut off. on it.
yeah, right. That exactly right.
But
Okay.
that's the best thing that I can describe that for, or used to describe that.
Yeah, we don't actually have a coffin bill up on the table right now.
No, because I don't really throw them.
So so like the crankbait that or the bill that Tyler has on that one right under your hands, Paul, the crawl pattern that you were showing earlier. What is that bill called? Yeah,
That
something like
is, I mean, that's more of it's really more of like a coffin bill. It's not really a round bill. It's not really a square bill, so it's going to fall into that like coffin bill type.
Now, what about that bill from the far crankbait right there?
Which one? That one?
Yes. Yep.
That's just a round.
Okay, so that's a round bill.
That's just going to be a round bill, deeper diving. Barton, I am gonna talk about the Fritz side, and
The Fritz side piece of shit.
you can keep thinking it's a piece of shit, Barton, because I have absolutely hammered them.
Was
on
it
the
like some
Fritz side.
Weston shit? What is that?
It's a Berkeley. It's your favorite.
God, dude, get that out of this. Get
Dude,
that out of the studio.
No, they're freaking money.
They're
So-
awful.
So anyway, we had the coffin, like the coffin bill style, and then we have like a round bill. So typical round bill here. I'm going to talk about a couple baits in each category.
Where does a coffin bill become
So coffin bill,
more utilized than a round bill?
so a round bill is going to have a much wider wobble than a coffin bill. So you're getting a lot more roll on the bait, where a coffin bill is going to give you a lot tighter, a lot tighter wobble.
You find that the coffin bill type bills more on like the flat sides and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you'll see them like the original Rapala DT flat was a true coffin bill. So that's essentially what Ott used. So it was this body with a coffin bill. So Ott took when Ott Defoe designed this crankbait. This is a OG Slim 6, it's a flat sided crankbait. He took that coffin bill out and replaced it with a round circuit bill to get the action that he wanted. Ott Defoe is a freaking lord
On the
genius.
Berkeley
Yeah,
product.
he's
is
he's
Rapala.
the crankbait guy.
That's Rapala.
Yeah, this is a Rapala.
He's the crankbait
So-
guy.
I'm going to talk about the coffin sides for the coffin bill first, because I just want to get it out of, get past it. So Chad isn't traumatized when I'm talking about Berkeley stuff. So this is a Berkeley Fritzside 5.
Oh my god.
And I don't know why people have issues with this. I've never broken one of these, and I fished them a ton, and I have caught a ton of fish on these. These are absolute freaking hammer baits. Even if you don't like Berkeley, like springtime, early spring, dude, I almost don't throw any other crankbait.
I'd rather smash my thumb with a hammer.
Okay, or you can not catch fish. That's fine too.
What he said.
So the Fritzside is just a really, really good cold water crankbait. So it's an early spring, late fall deal. Can you catch them in the summertime? Yeah, sometimes it's a little.
So Martin said he's having break in the packaging. Like, how did you manage to do that?
Breaking. in
I don't
the
understand. I
packaging.
don't understand why. Well, why? Like Martin's not the first person I've heard say that they're fragile. I think Greg's had a break too.
Break in the packaging?
I grind
That's
these.
next level.
I grind these into rock. Like you're just like straight grinding them into like rock in like 3 feet of water, and I've never had one break.
So not to change the subject, but when the Shatter
Every
Wrap,
one of mine is going to break now.
when the Shatter
Like
Wrap
first.
first came out, it was the most fragile piece of shit jerkbait.
God, I love that Shatter Wrap though.
When it first, do you remember when it first came out?
I
Like,
still have them.
you hit one dock and it was done.
Also never broke one of those either.
Really?
Yeah.
But we broke them. So again, not to hijack. My senior project was me and one of my best friends in high school. We went up to Deep Creek and we threw nothing but jerk baits, X wraps, Shatter Wraps, Lucky Cramps. We literally were just testing jerk baits, and like the Shatter Wrap was our least favorite jerk bait because you literally hit anything with it and it was broke. It didn't float right, didn't jerk right, whatever. Now, granted, we were fishing them on braided spinning rods because we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. However,
That was part of your problem.
that shit broke all the time.
10-pound fluorocarbon.
Oh, well, now I know, but back then it was like, 40-pound braid.
I
caught a 7.5 pounder on one.
The
Or a
Shatter Wrap,
Benjamin minnow.
the Shatter Wrap Deep. I have absolutely smoked fish on that.
That's when I learned about the Shatter Wrap Deep.
The Shatter Wrap Deep. There are places within driving distance of here that in the wintertime you can just absolutely wreck fish.
One of the biggest fish I've ever caught was on the X Wrap Deep. Lake Moomaw was a 7-pound even. That was the biggest fish I've ever caught on a jerkbait. That was awesome.
One of the best days I've ever had winter fishing was in January, 37-degree water temperature. I caught in an hour and a half. I caught 17 fish on a Shatter Wrap Deep. My best 5 was 19 pounds in 37-degree water.
That's crazy.
I mean, they were just, it was a very slow bite, but there was not to get off the crankbait topic, but Shatter Wrap Deep, it sinks. And with it, it would just sit on the bottom and then you just twitch it and it would just run right along the bottom and they were just crushing it. You would just dink and just let it sit there on the bottom. And then you go to hit it again and it would just look up. It was one of the coolest bites I've ever been on. So anyway, back to crankbaits. Since we got off topic there for a second. So The coffin bill style crankbaits. You have, this is a UMA War Company. This is a phenomenal flat-sided shallow crankbait. This will run to about 5 feet. 5 feet. Flat-sided crankbaits, I'm typically only throwing in spring and fall. They work better in those spring and fall situations where the water temperature is a little bit cooler and the fish are a little more lethargic. If it's summertime where the fish are a little more, they're going to be more active, more aggressive. That's when you want your round body with lots of wide wobble and crazy stuff like that. Not that the wide wobble doesn't work in the wintertime, but we can save that for another show. So our UMA War Company, this is the wedge. Very, very good crankbait in the early spring and late fall. And that's typically when I'm going to throw these coffin style crankbaits, is going to be early because they tend to have a very tight wobble, and typically in cold water you want that very subtle action. You want to fish it very slow.
Yep.
Still a great crankbait for rock. Not so great for wood. Your coffin bill crankbaits don't tend to deflect off of wood very well.
The wider profile of the bill is and helps with that quite a lot, I feel like.
So I'm going to throw this. I might throw the Fritz side. Fritz side, is a, like them or not, this David Fritz knows crankbaits, and he designed this crankbait. And this crankbait catches fish. I mean, it just flat out catches fish. Again, color, same deal. Match your color to your forage. You got your shad colors. That hook is short. Your shot colors and your crawl colors. I don't want to show that one too long. It's
It's a UMA bait too.
That is a UMA. That is a UMA wedge. That is a custom,
I like that color.
that's a custom color that Tyler painted for me. This is actually an old speed trap, which I didn't bring any speed traps. I should have. Another good shallow cold water crankbait. But this is a copy of a speed trap color that I really like. That I use this a lot in the wintertime. So flat-sided crankbaits with coffin bill. Again, remember, they're not very good for wood. They're really good in rock. But the main thing with your flat-sided crankbaits is fishing them slow, because you're typically fishing them in colder water.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to fish them a little bit slower than you normally would. Their crankbaits are a 12-month out of the year bait for me. I will throw a crankbait 12 months out of the year. I don't care if the water's 35 degrees or if the water is 85 degrees. I'm going to throw a crankbait at some point if I have hard cover. As I mentioned earlier, I don't throw a crankbait in grass a lot.
I do, but it's not a lipped crankbait.
Lipless. Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother category in my opinion.
I was going to say, can we fit that in here? We should probably
no.
just cover that later.
I figure we'll cover lipless crankbaits, because I can talk about lipless crankbaits for like 2 hours. That's one of my favorite ways to fish. So when you get into grass, there are certain types of crankbaits that do real well. I'm going to throw a little juice out here for you guys. This is a category of crankbaits that have just recently came out in the last couple of years. And they have a very specific bill design that allows it to come through grass better than just about any other crankbait on the market. And the example that I have here is the Strike King Hybrid Hunter. And if you notice, it's got an L-shaped bill.
That kind of reminds me of the original Shad Rat.
The shallow.
Yeah, the shallow.
Very much like that. So this crankbait, this is the smaller size. I can't remember their sizing on these, but they have a half-ounce version and a 3/4 ounce version. That L-shaped bill allows it to come through grass like no other crankbait I've ever fished. I picked some of these up this spring to give them a try, and I absolutely wrecked them this spring on this. It was just it's so efficient to fish it through the grass because you don't have to clear it as much.
It is the most
I watched you fish.
funky body styled crankbait I've ever seen.
It's just 'cause
Obviously,
it has
the
dorsal
whole lip is weird compared to what I've ever seen. It is.
It almost looks like one of those big Rapala trolling baits, just in a freaking mini.
Yeah, it looks like the Magnum Shad Wrap.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
got a build that's just like the same as the
It
Magnum
looks
Shad
exactly like a Magnum Shad Wrap, except it is just crankbait for bass.
It's yeah.
Not a crankbait I can ever say I've ever utilized, so I can't speak on it whatsoever. But
If you fish milfoil in the springtime, get yourself some of these. They come through milfoil so good. Martin, whatever.
stop crying.
I'm not saying anything that's not on any other YouTube channel out there. So, I mean,
Kinda.
Susquehanna Fishing Tackle.
Dude, we drop a lot of juice on this.
Susquehanna Fishing Tackle lets the cat out of the bag on this, and they have way more viewers than we do. So
they suck though.
no, they're all actually.
Nah, they're really cool. Seriously,
they're
they are.
cool.
Yeah, they're really cool people.
They're good.
I would actually, I would love to talk to them.
They're so you should go. Have you ever been up there? Have you?
I haven't actually been up there. I do watch their stuff though.
Good.
I do really like their
It's a good
stuff.
shop.
Yeah.
It's a good shop. Mike and George are really
I
cool.
I have to address a comment real quick. So Martin said he wrecked him in Florida on that. Martin, you and the Nitro World Order didn't wreck shit in Florida.
Martin wrecked his boat in Florida.
I'm fishing every day. It's okay. I don't see Dustin on. You're fine.
Oh,
The Nitro World Order didn't wreck shit in Florida. Yeah. They
oh
tried.
God, Martin's sitting there right now. He's dumbfounded. He's like, I can't believe they said
The
this.
Degeneration
So-
Express showed up and put the hurt down.
So this is like a very specific category of crankbait for me, and something that I really only fish in the springtime because when you get into the summertime, it's really hard to get these through the grass. But springtime, when that milfoil is first coming up, money. So there's a little juice for you.
So that's one thing I want to talk about when we're talking about crankbaits here is we have so many different categories of crankbaits to talk about, from square bills to flat sides, different sizes, obviously your different colors, coffin bills, round bills, you name it. But how do you like to utilize these crankbaits? So like you were talking, I remember you were saying earlier in this episode, you were out fishing with Tyler, and Tyler was running those crankbaits right on top of that grass, ticking that grass and kind of ripping it through, and he was getting bites. So, but there's different styles. You can run it on top of the grass, run it on the side of the grass. You don't have to fish grass with it. You fish in deep structure, you fish in rock.
The most important thing, it doesn't matter what type of structure you're fishing. The most important thing is that you make contact with the structure.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if you're fishing rock, wood, grass, whatever it is. If you're fishing a crankbait, unless you're fishing for smallmouth are different. You have to get it down on the bottom and make contact with that. Smallmouth, on the other hand, they tend to feed up a lot. So if I'm fishing for smallmouth, I actually want my bait to run about a foot above the bottom.
I will say that I feel about when I'm fishing for largemouth that 90% of the time, all of the bites that come on crankbaits, I'm going to call them reaction bites.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not actually the crankbait just swimming past. It's always hitting a piece of grass, ripping through, hitting a rock, flipping over,
Even
it,
just
going
popping
over a piece of wood, just popping it.
Popping
It's
it,
never
like you can be making a steady retrieve,
Yeah.
not touching anything, and you just pop it a couple times and pause it, and you'll get that reaction bite, and they'll just slam it.
What's up, Brian? Dude, you're tuning
doing,
in.
Brian?
You're tuning in at a really good time. I would definitely also like to say that your retrieve style. If you're throwing a crankbait and you are just burning that thing along, no pauses, no nothing, you're just winding it back in, you're missing fish. You need to make pauses. You need to let that thing sit there for a minute, crank it back down, do different things. Winding it out and consistently burning it back in every time sometimes is not what they're looking for.
Yeah, you really have to play with your retrieve. Sometimes that
Yes.
steady retrieve is the ticket. I mean, sometimes they'll just that steady retrieve, like a nice slow retrieve. Like sometimes that's the deal, but more times than not, it's not. I mean, I'm not saying don't do that because sometimes that's what you have to do, but you have to. The important thing is to play. If you're not getting bit, play with your retrieve. It could just be you need to reel a little faster. I fished so I had a club tournament on the Upper Bay, and
Actually, I didn't even read it, but Deborah asked a couple minutes ago, what retriever are we using?
so
Great question.
again, I'm listening to the fish. I've mentioned this in multiple episodes now. Like you got to let the fish tell you what they want. And let me tell my little anecdote, and then I'll go into that because it kind of ties into that. So, had a club tournament on the Upper Bay out of Tidings. I was going to run to the SAS. Weather was terrible, pouring down rain, winds blowing. I get to Battery Island, and I'm like, yeah, nope. Turned right around, looked at my buddy, and said, "We're fishing for smallmouth." Ran right up the river. Got to a spot up there. Where I'm kind of playing around, kind of crank. I knew I was going to be cranking, so I was throwing a DT10, and I was fishing 12 foot of water with a lot of rocks that come up to like 9. And I'm giving it that nice retrieve, that retrieve, getting it down there, letting it hit the rocks and glance off the rocks, and like I think I caught a couple of shorts doing that, and it just wasn't producing. And I knew the fish were there. Like I caught them in practice. Like that was kind of like my backup plan. They weren't big, but I knew I could catch a limit of 15-inch smallmouth there. So like I just started bombing cast as far as I could and reeling it as literally as fast as I possibly could. I was reeling my crankbait so fast that my arm hurt the next day. I mean, you couldn't. I fish 5-to-1 reel on crankbaits on all my crankbait rods. So if I had a 6-3-to-1, and maybe I wouldn't have had to reel it so fast. But for the most part, I fish a 5-3-to-1 reel on my crankbaits. Especially when I'm throwing deep cranks, because it's a lot easier on you. But I mean, I'm reeling this, as fast as I possibly can. Boom, keeper. Like, okay. Bombing out again. Burn it as fast as I can. Hit the rocks. And no pauses, nothing. Just when it hit the rocks and deflected, you just kept cranking as fast as you could.
Is there ever a time where you throw the crankbait out there and say you want that crankbait to reach maximum depth as quickly as it can? Do you ever burn it really quickly to get it there and then slow down on your retrieval?
All the time. I do that in the springtime a lot because what I want in the springtime, a lot of time I'm looking for slow retrieve. If I'm throwing like the OG6, this is one of my favorite springtime crankbaits, cold water crankbaits. I've caught a lot of big fish.
That's the Rapala.
Yes. So it's a Rapala OG Slim 6. I have caught some monster smallmouth on this, which a lot of people look at it like, man, that's kind of a big crankbait for smallmouth. No, they
it's like a 2.0.
Yeah. So
they love that freaking.
With this in the springtime, it gets to, I'm fishing that like 6 to 8 foot range.
Smallmouth will munch a 6-inch glide bait. They will definitely eat that.
Yeah, that's something like people think, oh, you're fishing for smallmouth, you have to use small baits. No, they eat big baits.
They eat big shit. They're more aggressive than largemouth.
I have watched them cough up, like 5-inch shad.
I've watched,
and I'm talking like 14-inch.
I've watched wolf packs hunt a bait down back to the boat and then return back to the deeps. Largemouth don't do that.
So with this bait, yes, they do. They just don't do it around here.
I'm sorry.
It's not a title thing. When you get into if you get into lake fishing, like deeper, clear reservoirs and stuff like that, you'll see that. You'll see that more with largemouth as well. So this OG6 in the springtime, I'm doing exactly that. I'm cranking it down as fast as I can to get it on the bottom because I want this hitting every rock on the bottom. Once I get it down, I just crawl it through the rocks. I think I can't remember who coined the term for it, but I think it might have been Gerald Swindle. Worming.
He says bass school around here in the reses.
They do in the reservoirs, yeah, absolutely. Yep. So I think it was Gerald Swindle. They called it worming a crankbait. And
I've only seen it with the smallmouth in Conowingo, though.
Yeah.
In the reservoirs, I've never had largemouth Wolfpack my baits. It's always been singles. But it's, I mean, a completely different topic.
Yeah.
Most of the smallmouth I've caught on crankbaits have been schoolies.
So-
Make the same cats over and over and over again.
So again, I'm worming the crank. Crank it down really quick, get it on the bottom, and then you're just crawling it as slow as you can through the rocks, keeping it on the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reeling as slow as I can with it staying in bottom contact. And, you know, I'm just worming it across the bottom. And I caught 21.29 pounds of upper bay smallmouth doing that on this exact bait. Not this exact bait, but this one's called a couple.
That's a Rapala.
Same bait, you know, the OG Slim, just in a different color, but still a shad. You know, just nothing fancy, just a shad color. It's you know, it's all in it's your retrieve, and if you're not changing up your retrieve throughout the day to
That's
try to
key.
figure out, that is absolutely key.
It's key.
Yeah, I
You can't
completely
just-
agree with that.
You know, what's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yep.
You can't, if you're not getting bit on the retrieve that you've been doing, try changing your retrieve. You know, if you went, do you know the color, Martin? If you can name it, I'll give you one. about that?
Oh. We're waiting, Martin.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
We're
I have,
waiting, Martin.
because I have a half a dozen of them at home. So I feel like I probably have more OG Slims than anyone in West Harbor.
You'd have to have more than me. Because I only have like 3 colors that I care about.
I have like 40.
Colors?
No, like 40
Oh.
OG Slims. Yeah.
He says penguin.
Nope. Wrong.
Hey,
You're
you
wrong,
win.
Martin.
Penguin. No.
Penguin is a good color, though. It's one of my favorite Rapala colors. I will throw that out there. Very good color, Martin, but that is not the color that I throw. I throw a lot of colors in the OG. This is one of my favorite crankbaits. I throw it a lot. I throw a lot of different colors in it. Not the color that I caught the 21 pounds of smallmouth on.
Bass and Beer Radio Trivia coming on Wednesdays.
Those were that was and those were title smallmouth, I would like to add. So not just I wasn't fishing Conowingo, I wasn't fishing one of the reservoirs, I wasn't fishing Deep Creek. No, I caught 21.29 pounds of smallmouth on the Upper Bay. I'm pretty proud of that.
You should be proud of that. That's pretty awesome. Now, because we're talking about smallmouth just for a second, the 2009 Open on the Upper Bay,
Mhm.
the guy that was leading it, I think for the first 2 or 3 days, had all smallmouth. Over,
First day. The guy was leading the first day, had all smallmouth.
wasn't it like a ridiculous bag? It was like 23, 24 pounds.
I think it was 22.
But he had gone all the way up, and then the next day had not gone up as far as he could, or
Yeah.
something. But it was, long story short, low tide and a rock ruined his tournament.
He
Does
didn't
that
go
sound
all
about right? But he went up farther than most, right?
He was fishing something very specific. I know where it was. It's just a big rock pile. And it's one of the spots that I know, and they stack on it.
Didn't
It's
he
like-
hit something now and like it ruined his
I
tournament?
can't remember. That tournament was kind of crazy. It was really early in the year.
Oh, so I
Water
thought it
was
in the
cold.
summer.
No, it was real early. Water was cold.
Okay.
You had over on the bank before you get to Ferns Bay.
Mhm.
There were like 50 boats fishing that bank in like 2 separate lines. Like they were literally bumper to bumper in one line, and then they were bumper to bumper behind them, casting up to the backs of their boats. Like there was like 50 boats over there.
That's insane.
One of the guys I fished with in Tennessee for a regional was in that tournament. And him, I can't remember the other two. It was him, Jonathan Van Dam, and 2 other people. Like they were sitting literally bumper to bumper. Like their boats were touching. When one of them would catch a fish, they would back out to land it and then just come into the side. And they were just rotating in their little group so that they kept the spot.
That's crazy.
It was a really cold tournament, and I think that's why the smallmouth played so much. The smallmouth on the Upper Bay are much easier to catch when the water's colder. I really struggle Sorry.
Nope.
Uh,
Was gonna post it, but nope.
I spelled so
Chris, love the picture, brother, of you, but nope.
I struggle catching the smallmouth on the Upper Bay in the summertime, and I think some of it is just I need to put in more time and just figure out where they move to. But
Yeah, but it's. I feel like it's almost in a way it's almost a fool's errand because you know what it's going to take to win any big tournament on the Upper Bay, and it's going to be greenfish. So like
yeah, but
you have to find the mother lode of all mother lodes. Where I feel like on the flats you have a better chance of finding that better.
yeah, but so there's also a better chance of 100 other boats being on that spot too.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm the type of person that likes to go look for, well, like you, I don't like fishing in crowds. I know you don't like fishing in crowds either.
Yeah.
So, but most of my smallmouth fishing, is crankbait fishing. I do a ton around here. Ton of crankbait fishing for smallmouth, especially in the springtime. It's a blast. I mean, just wrecking, 4.5 pound smallies on crankbaits. So much fun. So, another round bill crankbait. Now, getting back to the crankbait conversation. Another Rapala, the OG Slim 4. This is a bad little bitch.
Brand new last fall.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second and say you guys have definitely brought a different barrage of baits into the arsenal that we're talking about today. None of my juice is up here tonight. I don't have any of my juice laying out here on the table. That's not going to say that I don't mean that I'm not going to talk about it. Most of you guys already know that I like throwing Megabass products.
These are the what's that? What's their square bill?
The Megabass knuckle.
Is that no, not the
The knuckle is like a round bill, but it is still like a 3 to 4.
No, I'm talking about they're just like a regular square bill.
No.
Is it like the SB something or something? It's like it's got that big like bulbous head and it annoys the hell out of me. I just can't stand looking at it.
No, I do not actually. The
S crank, yeah.
Okay, so the S crank is actually more of.
I mean, it's a square bill.
It is definitely a square bill, but it is more of like a fall time thing.
God, I hate that. I just hate the way it looks. I can't throw it.
Yeah, I know, dude.
It doesn't.
No, don't ever buy one because they suck.
Yeah,
they all suck.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's some couple good options by Megabass. I don't have any of my juice up here, but Megabass makes some good stuff and they make some good colors.
Well, that's the nice thing about I don't like this doesn't even touch my crankbait collection. I'm a crankbait junkie, and that's my deal. That's what I love doing.
I stay partial to what I have confidence in, where I feel like you seem to have confidence in like 20 different types of baits.
Oh yeah, more than that.
I don't I'm talking brands.
I have confidence in
I like
5 or 6.
I mean,
I
if you
have
look here-
confidence in like I have like 1 or 2 square bills I like. I have like 1 or 2 deep divers that I like. You know what I mean? Like I kind of stay.
So just looking at what I have out here, you have Excalibur, UMA, Lucky Craft, Rapala, 6th Sense, Lucky Strike.
UMA is. I will say
Berkeley.
this is no bullshit. Not because
Strike King.
UMA has anything to do with the show, but UMA's cranks really are some of like the gnarliest cranks on the market. I think they make some of the best crankbaits on the market, dude. I freaking love them.
Tyler's paint jobs are they're so good.
Yeah.
He does such a good job with his paint. And if you're looking for, like a high quality crankbait with a good, a good quality paint job that's very, very natural. This is
the little pudge.
This is probably my favorite color that he paints.
Yes, that is fantastic.
I mean, it's just an amazing, he's got amazing colors. Their crankbaits are high quality. They're durable especially for balsa baits. I slammed one into a bridge piling and all it did was knock the paint off of it. So it didn't break the crankbait or anything. I mean, I just full on casted it and smashed it into a bridge piling. And like I said, all it did was knock the paint off of it.
I'll admit it online out loud that I got Tyler's crankbaits in the mail for some of the bait reviews, and after I threw one,
He kept them all.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
I did.
didn't share.
I didn't share any of them. They're freaking awesome. I
Yeah.
can't like give them up.
No,
They're
I have.
freaking great. Everybody on Bass and Beer Radio deserves the crankbaits and everything. We've all put in as much work, but after I threw one, I was like,
It's okay.
they ain't getting shit. Tony's already out here hammering them on something else. Man, I'm gonna go get a crankbait.
It's okay. I have a small fortune in UMA UMA crankbaits, so I'm good. But-
Absolutely.
So I did leave out one color that plays a lot around here. I just want to mention this real quick. So
So you have natural, you had a shock, and then what was it? You had what was the
Bluegill.
other one that you got?
Bluegill and crawl.
Bluegill color, bluegill and crawl,
this plays a lot around here.
fire tiger.
It's actually yellow perch.
That's the original yellow.
So this is kind of fire tiger, not quite as bright as fire tiger, but it's a yellow perch color, especially in the fall. In the fall, wintertime, early spring, the yellow perch color just gets bit. And there's a lot of yellow perch in the upper bay, and that's
Everywhere.
again, it's matching the hatch. So when they're eating yellow perch, which they do, all bass eat yellow perch on the upper bay a lot.
Yep, tons of them.
The yellow perch color crankbait can be pretty money. It's kind of outside my normal, my four normal categories, but it is something that I do throw quite a bit. Especially like I said, in the late fall, early spring, especially in like February, and I fish a lot in the wintertime, and I throw crankbaits all winter. February, when the yellow perch are running, when they're, I don't know if you're familiar with the yellow perch run. Yellow perch move out of the bay and they move up the river to spawn, and they move up the creeks and and bass will just gorge themselves on them, and that is a good time to throw a yellow perch color crankbait. But as far as that, time of year to throw a crankbait, I just want to go into that just a little bit. So, all year, there's certain situations where you can catch fish on crankbait all year. Now, in the summertime, if you're fishing lakes, you go into your deep cranking. On tidal rivers, you can throw. If you're fishing in an area that has a lot of hard cover and not a lot of grass, you can catch them on a square bill, all through the summer. But the thing to remember with your crankbait fishing is the colder it gets, the slower you reel it.
Yep.
Everything slows down. You want a tighter action for the most part. Sometimes it's like one of those things like, oh yeah, you want a tighter action, except when they don't want a tighter action.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, things like a wiggle wart, wiggle wart is a, very famous cold water crankbait, has a very, very wide wobble. So there's two, both play a part. So you can catch fish on a crankbait in the wintertime with a tight wobbling crankbait and with a wide wobbling crankbait. What you're looking at is one is a feeding strike and one's a reaction bite. Wintertime bass are very territorial. So you have a wide wobbling crankbait. You're still fishing it slow. You're not fishing it fast. It's just got a wide wobble. When it comes into their area, a lot of times they're just hitting it because they don't want it around them. It's just disturbing them. It's the same way with the blade bait. Blade bait's the same way.
Yeah.
It's that hard vibration. It's just around them. They don't want it there and they'll bite it.
Yep.
That's why you foul hook a lot of fish when you're blade baiting. You'll do the same thing if you're throwing a wide wobbling crankbait. You'll foul hook a lot of fish.
That's
Just because
another
it's
great
so-
topic. Actually, we're talking about some blade baits.
Oh, we'll talk
That
about
would
blade baits
That would
later.
be a fantastic topic.
Later in the year when we get maybe in
We'll
farther
save
down
that for the
line,
wintertime.
like
brother.
November
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about it in November.
when that blade bait fishing gets good. I owe Rob a late fall upper bay trip. I told him that I would give him a chance to catch a PB.
I'll follow you there.
No problem.
I can do that now. Yes.
It's easy. Go to the Northeast Fish Docks.
Oh, okay.
You can do that now.
Yeah,
You
well, I
can do that.
couldn't do that. Well, I could. I'd just have to go all the way to Northeast and launch,
Yeah, right.
and then probably get swamped.
No, we're not doing anything special. I just Rob wanted to do some wintertime fishing, so He told me his PB was just over 6 pounds. I was like, well, I can definitely give you a chance to improve that,
Mhm.
in that late fall bike. I mean, I've caught, I've caught, a lot of high 6s and low 7s, in that time of year. So we're going to go do some blade bait fishing, try to catch some big ones, see if we can come across a PB for Rob. But we will most definitely be throwing shallow crankbaits that day. And so tying that in there, as far as like when to throw them, like we're talking about shallow crankbaits, and people think like, oh, I'm throwing a shallow crankbait, I'm going to throw it in the wintertime. Dustin, you already know where I'm going. It's the Northeast. Everybody knows the Northeast. Everybody knows where the fish are over there. It's no secret. November. So when we're talking about shallow crankbaits, this isn't just a warm water tactic. I mean, I've caught fish in less than 4 feet of water on crankbaits when the water temperature is below 40 degrees.
Yeah.
I've done it on the Potomac. I've done it on the Upper Bay. I've done it in the Gunpowder. And it's going to be related to deep water or to wintering areas, but tidal bass they're not like reservoir bass. They don't all go deep to winter. So if you look at reservoir bass, a lot of reservoir bass, they're going to pull off on points, and they're going to be relatively deep or very close to deep water.
How do you winter in areas that aren't deep?
Find the areas without current, protected areas. So I'll give one example on the Potomac, the spoils. Everybody knows about the spoils. Everybody knows it's a wintertime spot. It's not deep water. There's some 8-foot areas in there, but most of the spoils is like 3 to 4 feet. It is a huge, huge wintering hole on the Potomac, and it's because it's protected. So it's a cove, and the spoils are just like junk that's been thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all concrete on the front. So the front is all protected from the main river. There's one entrance in. So wind blowing, if it's blowing from the river, just hits that concrete. Doesn't disturb the water back there. If it's blowing from the other way, the bank's protecting it. So it's just protected. There's very little current in there. Wintertime bass, especially largemouth, are going to do everything that they can to avoid current. That's just what they want to do. So you're going to find the areas that have, it could be a shallow protected bay like the spoils, or it could be deep. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't winter deep. I'm just saying that not all of them winter deep.
Mm-hmm.
There are, certain marinas over in the Northeast. They're very protected. They're great wintering spots. You can catch, in 40-degree water, you can catch fish in 3 feet of water. Yeah, that's what it's one of the big things on the Northeast in the wintertime is catching fish.
Back in the marina in the J-Town.
In
Not
J-Town,
any
yeah.
more than 4 feet deep.
No.
That's where they're
Kind of
at.
reminds me of my wintertime hole a little bit.
Catching little docks. What's that?
My wintertime hole.
Back in J-Town.
What's his
The
name?
one I took you to that one time.
Oh yeah. Me and Antonio, Tony took me to a place one time, and he's like, dude, these fish eat here in the wintertime. Water's like 37 degrees, and we're just smashing them on rattle traps, like burning rattle traps in like 2 feet of water. It was crazy. So don't think that just because it's wintertime, you have to fish deep. You're gonna have now the certain situations. I do fish a baby 1 minus Deborah. Usually I fish them over top of grass. That's about the only time that I fish them. I think there are better crankbaits for other situations, but a baby 1 minus is pretty good for fishing over top of grass because they don't run very deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your wintertime, the main thing is your feeding windows are a lot smaller. So, they might push up shallow to feed, and that feeding window, it might be a half hour, and then it's done for the entire day.
Yep.
It's 1.5 hour period during the entire day. And then they pull off to where the first drop usually. But they'll move up on that flat. If there's, a couple of scenarios, a little bit warmer water, a degree or two warmer, we'll push them up on it. Sometimes, there's certain things that'll make the water heat up a little better if it's bright sunshine. Things like rock and, different types of structure. But you want to, you don't be afraid to fish shallow in the wintertime is what I'm saying. I mean, I call it my personal best tidal bass came out of like 3 feet of water. And it came in December and the water was 42 degrees. Didn't catch it on the crankbait. Well, I caught it on a lipless crankbait, but so close enough. But, it was 4 feet of water in 42-degree water in December. You don't have to fish deep. Some fish go deep, not all of them.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm thinking about the home juice in general, and it's like, how are you going to winter if 90% of the place is freaking 4 foot deep?
Well,
There's only two spots that are freaking 10 foot deep.
those 2 spots are very big wintering holes. A lot of fish
Well,
in the
yes.
wintertime.
But I haven't figured out how to catch them there yet.
It ain't hard. One bait. You only need one bait. You can catch them.
We'll talk about that off the air.
So
Pause it. I'm not talking about
that goes in. That's our November show.
No.
Yeah,
That's one of our November shows. So just to sum everything up, your different types of crankbaits do different things. The best advice that I can give you, I can tell you how each one of these acts, but go out and just buy, get you a couple different crankbaits, a couple different bill styles. Just look at the bill style. You don't have to know exactly what they are. Go out and throw them in a swimming pool, or just drag them next to the boat. Just drag them back and forth next to the boat and just see what the action is. You'll see that if you drag a flat side crankbait next to the boat, it's got a real tight wobble like this. You drag the square bill next to the boat, it goes like this. Next to the boat. So just take your crankbaits, see what they are, and then figure out, understand what the situations for throwing that type of action are.
What their purpose.
Exactly, what their purpose is. So, throw a square bill when you're trying to bang it off cover. Like, that's all I throw a square bill for. Like, when I'm banging off cover, wood, rock, throwing a square bill. When I'm throwing a flat side like this, I'm looking more just for that subtle. I'm not looking for a lot of deflection because I'm usually throwing in colder water. So I want that nice, that nice subtle, that those lethargic, like wintertime bass are gonna eat.
Yeah.
If I'm throwing the OG, it's a flat side crankbait, but
Does that
now
look sharp?
yes, very. There might be blood there.
Yes.
I watched it. I was like, I know he's feeling that right now. He's just not saying anything.
So, the OG Slim, which I love, now, I'm fishing this on rock, and I want this to hit, I want this to crawl over rock. Same with pretty much any flat side. Like, I can do the same thing with this. I can just crawl this over rock. I'm not going to throw this in wood. I'm not going to throw this in wood. OG Slim, fantastic crankbait. Don't ever throw it next anywhere. Don't throw it within 10 feet of any piece of wood. It will get hung up. But it's probably one of my favorite crankbaits for fishing rock. So just understand what those different bill styles do. Understand what their action is, and then use those to apply that to your fishing style. If you don't like fishing in the winter, you probably don't need 500 flat side crankbaits like I have. If your season is, say like, your typical bass season in the earlier season. I'm not sure what just happened there.
I got you.
I did not touch that. I promise.
No, it's his headset was playing games.
So, I'm not hating on anyone for, fishing that like May through October season.
That's me right there.
That's the
Hell, I'm May
that's the
and
normal.
October. That's pretty much it.
Right. May through October, that's like your normal tournament season around here is going to be May through October, maybe April, it might venture into April to early November. But, if you're only fishing May through October, you don't need 37 different flat side crankbaits. You're mostly fishing warmer water. You might need, some more square bills and stuff like that because your fish are going to be up shallower. They're going to be up shallower and they're going to be ready to feed, especially in like May, when they're really pushing up and they're really feeding hard in May and April and May. So, keep that in mind. I'm a crankbait junkie. I was telling those guys earlier, I think I own somewhere around 700 crankbaits, which is not a lot compared to some people, but
Okay, Paul.
it's quite a bit.
Just keep thinking that.
My buddy Frank, he's got me beat.
It's not a lot compared to like KVD or like somebody like that.
If I'm a sucker for color for paint job, for good paint jobs. So if I see just a really nice paint job like this Rapala, it's just see if I can get a little closer there. It's just a really Rapala has some for mass produced crankbaits. Rapala has some really good colors.
I think they have the best, honestly. I would argue.
For mass produced,
Yeah.
I would 6 cents is probably the best for colors, but Rapala's up there, especially with their crawl colors. The Rapala crawl colors
Fantastic.
are absolutely amazing. Yeah, but I throw all 700 of mine, Deborah.
I got you beat. 700 crankbaits.
And 3/4 of mine are in the boat.
Oh, dude.
That's not true.
Yeah, I only have like 2 crankbait boxes.
I have two.
I have a so I have a square bill box. So different times of the year I have more, but generally all throughout the year I'll have a square bill box. I'll have a mid-depth box, and then I'll have a deeper box. That does not now my deeper box is deep for around here. So that doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't have like my 6XDs, my 10XDs, and my 8XDs in those. That's something I like. Those stay at home until I need them. Like if I'm going someplace I know I need them. Like if I'm going to Conowingo, my 6XD box is coming with me.
Right.
I throw a 6XD on Conowingo a lot. But if I'm fishing Upper Bay, I don't throw 6XD up here. I probably should. It's probably something I should play around with, but I just don't do it. So my deep box is going to have maybe like 5 XDs, which go to about 15 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be my deep box in that 12 to 15 foot range. But I don't carry those super deep boxes. So really I carry those 3 all year. And my mid-depth box, by the way, is all Rapala. Like there's nothing other than Rapala.
Mr. Larry with Bass Mission says, "Good evening, gentlemen." And I use that term loosely.
That's because he's a smart man.
He is a very and then in the springtime and fall, flat side box goes in the boat. I'll always have the flat side box in there.
Always.
But I don't throw I don't really throw them too much outside of spring and fall. So usually by the time I stop throwing them is when my frog box goes in. So my frog box goes in, the flat side box comes out, and I just kind of keep swapping it over like that. So they don't have too much gear in the boat.
I got all the tailored frogs out right now.
That being said, Chad knows how much tackle I keep in my boat, and it is like a small Bass Pro.
Not really sure how he fits it all in there.
Very
Or
good.
he also used like my trolling motor only moves my boat like 2 miles an hour. I'm like, well, Paul, that's also because you have about 900 pounds of tackle in your boat.
And 32 rods.
Yeah, with 32 rods, 40 rods.
Oh, just wait. Now that you have like a formal rod locker, let's see how many rods you keep in your boat.
Quite a few. Quite a few.
Uh-huh.
I have boat payments to make now, so I don't think I'll be buying a shit ton of rods.
Yeah, but how many rods do you have?
15, 16.
Oh, yeah. So you'll
Dude, I have
probably
10.
have 15 or 16 in the boat.
I haven't
Literally
really
have
had
10
trouble.
more than that in my boat. That's not including the ones that aren't in there. Now, my boat's been paid off for a year and a half.
Oh, I mean, I have a
Yeah.
lot of rods. I usually keep about 25 in my boat at any given time.
Well, you guys also
I'm
know,
like 20.
you guys also know the type of rods and reels that I like to use too.
I mean, I
I
feel
kind of gotta like dumb. I gotta like
If your
dumb-
rod and reel combo isn't from Japan, you're not buying it.
Kinda, but I'm
Like
starting to
that.
get to the point where I'm just like
if I need to replace a rod and I'm just like, dude, I've always been content with the Dobbins Fury series. I'm not
Dobbins
gonna lie.
Fury's are good rods.
I freaking love the Dobbins Fury
Probably the
series.
best bang for
I
the buck.
love bougie ass JDM rods. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if I can afford to purchase one at the time, like, that's what I'm gonna pick up.
Yeah.
But dude, I got nothing negative to say about any of like the Dobbins Fury series or anything like that. They're
Larry says
fantastic rods.
65 rods. That's quite.
65 rods, and don't ask me why.
I'm up there.
I don't have that much.
That is a
I'm
lot.
probably-
I might have like 5 or 6 that aren't in
I'm
the
probably flirting around 50.
rods
Around.
and
Rods
reels.
and reels, yeah.
Yeah, I ain't got
Not,
that.
not counting my fly rods.
I didn't know you had fly rods.
Yeah, I have like
He
7.
started fly fishing.
I did too, actually. That's cool as shit.
Yeah.
We should do that one day. We should
Fucking
do fly
loser.
What?
I'm a loser.
You're a loser because
I don't even know how to use a fly rod.
It's fine.
It's like
not,
a fairy wand. You just.
It's not
It's like a
fun.
fairy wand.
It's really. It's not fun to learn.
Right.
I feel like it's something that if I didn't learn it when I was a kid, like I wouldn't. Have
Oh,
fun learning
100%.
now.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
But
It is fun though.
I love fly fishing.
I've caught like 2 fish in my life fly fishing, and it was one of them. I'll never forget it because I was so excited I caught a fish fly fishing.
Yeah.
I've caught some giants, some really big erie steelhead on fly rods.
You ever caught any big smallmouth fly fishing?
About 3.5 pounds.
That'd be so
That's fun.
cool doing that like fly.
Top water.
You don't
Could you
actually
imagine being
really-
on a boat fly fishing? Like, what would people think if you're just like out there on a boat? Just, like, fly
So I can tell you, maybe
You might
not
run
this
into me in
year, but
Downtown every now and then.
Huh?
Usually I'm down in Lake Dundee. I've been trying to catch a snakehead on a fly rod for a while.
oh,
That'd
that
be
would be
wild.
fun. Or a striper on a fly rod. That would be cool.
I've hooked a few. I haven't landed one yet. Kind of makes me mad.
It's hard to it's really. Your rod is like 9 foot long. Sometimes, most of them are. I have to get into that
9.
conversation.
8 to
8 to 9. What are you using for tippet? Like 9x, 10x, 12x.
Straight 20-pound fluorocarbon.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's very
For
interesting.
snakeheads.
Okay, gotcha.
Snakeheads, I'm using just 6 foot straight 20-pound fluorocarbon.
So, since you maybe aren't as well versed in fly fishing, so the reason why a leader on a fly rod is called a tippet. By the way, fly fishing is how I learned. Like,
Think of it as like
90% of the knots that I
Braid to
use.
leader.
Yes.
Except you have fly line to leader.
Right. So, but your tippet actually starts with a higher diameter, and by the time you get to where you tie the lure on, it's thin.
It's tapered.
So it does taper off.
It helps it. So when you're casting like this, it helps roll over. So if it's thicker at the bottom than it is at the top, it helps it keep it from like folding in on itself.
Gotcha.
Not that you care.
Did you have any like super nice fly rod setups, or were they all just like your kind of like entry level?
I have a-
That's all I have was like entry level, like Fluger. You got it like Dick's.
I have a Scott.
Okay.
That was actually my graduation present. I still have it. I have a
That's
Scott
cool.
4-weight.
Very cool.
I have a Cortland 4-weight that's not like high end, but it's like a few $100s. I have a TFO. I have a St. Croix 9-weight.
Oh, very nice. So you're gonna talk about like high end fly, like there's
Yeah,
a
you want
place
to? Yeah, if you
right
think,
next to my house or my parents' house in Sparks, Great Feathers Fly Shop.
yeah,
Like
Great
their
Feathers is good- that's
their
good place.
fucking minimum fly rod's like $600.
Nah.
Shoo.
It
No.
was when I walked.
They have
Like,
no.
well, their bamboo selection, like they have like.
Well, when you get into
3-piece
bamboo, you're
rods.
talking minimum $1,200.
Oh yeah, it was
A
dude,
bamboo fly rod.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
3-piece.
They're
That's
super
wild.
cool.
Yeah, it was outrageous. And the guides are not.
You should
cheap.
get one.
No,
No. I thought fly fishing was expensive, and then I went and got into bass fishing. I'm like, yeah, this is worse.
no.
That's
When you talk about equipment, like like we have bass fishing, we have boats and things
Right.
like that. But when you talk about like fly fishing, like the
One
average
lure.
price for a fly rod
Oh,
is
it's exponentially
twice as much as the average price for.
You're
for
talking
bass
about
fishing
a
rod.
bait that big with a hook that you almost need a magnifying glass to see is worth like $6.
A good swim jig rod that you don't have to put a lot of work in order to get in good action, in your opinion. So my favorite swim jig rod is the St. Croix. Let me make sure that I'm giving you the right model. It's the St. Croix Mojo Bass, and nothing fancy. It's a swim jig rod. You don't need anything too fancy. St. Croix Mojo Bass 7-1 medium heavy fast action. It is their, if you go by their naming coin, it's a jig and baits. But 7-1 that's my preferred. That's my preferred length for a swim jig rod. Some people like a 7.3. I wouldn't go any longer than that.
Yeah.
But you don't need like a 7.6 or anything like that. 7. I really like the 7.1. I fish swim jigs on the St. Croix Victory 7.1 medium heavy. I've fished them on my Legend tournament. Just for reference, I only fish St. Croix rods. That's why I'm only naming St. Croix rods. But so really all I have experience with. But the new Legend tournament 7.1 medium heavy is a freaking amazing rod. Man, that rod is so sweet.
If you're into more like the mid price to the high end rods, either the St. Croix and or I brought it up before in like the previous episode, like a Shimano X Pride,
Yep.
something like that in your medium heavy fast action range, and your 7 foot range is going to give you a really good action for that. And like we said earlier too, if you're like in that bottom rod category,
For swim jigs, just make sure it has a little tip.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, you don't want like a really stiff set like 7.1 medium heavy. It's got to have a little flex in the tip. That flex in the tip is what's going to give you your action when you're working a swim jig, especially if you're
It
into
lets
that,
them
like
get it. Too.
that Alabama shake retrieve, which is just when you're really just working a bait with your rod tip and you're just steady shaking it, and just basically reeling in the slack, which allows you to keep it really high in the water column and work it really slow. It's very erratic. You need to have a little tip for that. And like Tony said, when they eat it, you want that little bit of tip just to make sure that they got it.
So my rod of choice for that, before we move on,
It is an Arden, and they're pieces of junk. So
It's an
let's
Arden
move on.
Edge 7 foot medium heavy. The Ardent Edge has a little bit more tip than the Ardent Apex Pro Series. I like them both, but I really like that Ardent Edge 7 out. I caught a lot of fish on it this year. A lot of them on the back of Paul's boat, actually, as a matter of fact.
He did catch a lot of fish on the back of my boat that day.
And that was all in the same setup. So that's been the rod. That's been my
On the
swim
swim
jig rod this
Yeah.
year. Hookup ratio seems to be pretty good. It's not necessarily the best in this heavy grass, but I feel like what you lose in that heavier grass, you make up for in bites. And that grass bite within the next 4 to 6 weeks is going to start to taper off slightly.
So I use a 6.3 to 1 reel when I first swim jig. I use a 6.3, 6.5, 6.8 in that range for just about for most of my stuff. When it involves a moving bait, or a spinner bait, if it's spinner bait, swim jig, stuff like that.
I think you can
with a
work the
7.3,
speeds differently, like easier.
I feel like I overwork the bait with a 7.3.
Hello?
So I'm just I'm picking up too much line with it. So I like a little slower reel for a swim jig, and I love fishing a swim jig. So I will throw a swim jig till my arm falls off, but I like a little bit slower. I also feel like, especially if you're fishing grass, that I'm a firm believer in that, that 6.3, you have more torque,
Mm-hmm.
when you're reeling them in to get them out of that grass, to be able to get them up out of that grass. So I'm not saying, but again, like a lot of things with fishing,
Preference.
it's all
Personal preference.
it's personal preference.
Confidence.
Use what works for you. Just because I throw a swim jig on a 7.1 doesn't mean that, everybody needs to throw it on a 7.1. If you like throwing it on a 7.3, throw it on a 7.3. If that works for you, go for it. Especially if you're taller.
I would
that's what
definitely stay in that 7 foot zone though.
Well, what a lot of people don't take into account is like I'm 5 foot. I'm 5'10" barely. What are you, 6'1",
6'4".
6'4"?
Are you
Yeah.
really
Are you really 6'4"?
Holy shit.
So, what a good length for a rod for me is definitely going to be different for you because you got 6 inches on me. Well, in height anyway.
In both ways.
Damn!
So, when you're picking out a rod, like if you're fishing like a topwater rod, like I throw, if I'm throwing a popper, I'm throwing a popper on a 6'6". You could probably get away with a 7 foot rod, throwing a popper. I can't, just because I'm not tall enough to throw a 7 foot rod with a popper. I'm going to be smacking the rod tip into the water.
Yeah.
So, keep that in mind that like your height is going to make a difference on the rod that you select. For crankbaits, since we didn't really talk about, I just want to throw this in real quick before we end. We didn't talk about rod for crankbaits. 100% of the time, never anything else. All of my crankbaits get thrown on a glass rod. I only throw glass rods on crankbaits. My hookup's better with a glass rod. I land more fish with a glass rod. If you don't throw a glass rod, at least throw a moderate action. You need that moderate action. And that is the one thing where you can get away with as long a rod as possible, because
I'm
you want
7.6. Yep.
7.6.
11 KVD throws a 7.11.
I throw my deep crank rod 7.8. I would throw a 7.11. If I buy another one, it'll be a 7.11. Crankbait. A lot of times crankbaits are all about how far you can cast, especially when you're worried about depth.
Mm-hmm.
Shallow cranks, not so much. Because shallow crank's gonna get, it's gonna get down deep. But when you get into more like mid-depth cranking, deep cranking, if you can't absolutely bomb that bait out there, your bait's only gonna be in the strike zone for 15 feet, 10, 15 feet out of a 40-yard cast.
Right.
So you've got to maximize getting your bait into the strike zone. You want to make a long cast doing that. A lot of times, if you're fishing like a square bill or something, you're throwing a very specific structure, so you want to go with a shorter rod. My square bill rod that I throw most often is a 610, because I can make very accurate casts with it. And most of the time when I'm fishing a square bill, like I'm throwing it to wood. Yeah, especially around here, I'm throwing it to wood. If I'm fishing rock, like if I'm fishing a rock bank, I'll throw it on. Well, what's my other rod? 7.3.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 7.3. Allows me to make a longer cast. I can really reel it down that rock bank for a long way. Keep my bait in the strike zone longer. But if I'm targeting wood, 610, because I want to be able to pinpoint cast into, you got that
crack
line
in
of the
the
tree.
freaking- yeah.
Like I want to be able to land it in between those two limbs every time and not have to worry about getting it hung up.
Yep.
Because if I got to go in there to get my crankbait,
You blew the spot out.
I'm going to blow the spot out.
Right.
Now,
Yep.
me, if that tree looks that good, I'm just breaking it off.
I'm not.
Nah, I don't care. I'll go in and get it later. Like if it's hung good, I'll just break it off. I'll go in and get it later. I broke one of Tyler's. I broke that exact crankbait right there. I broke it off in my club tournament on Saturday because I didn't want to ruin the tree that I was fishing. Now,
How did you go back and get it?
that one I lucked out because the log was underwater. When I broke it off, it floated to the surface.
Oh, nice.
So I looked at the guy that was on the back of my boat, and I was like I know there's more fish on this tree, and they were not keepers though. So I was like, I don't want to break this off. It's an $18 crankbait, but like I don't want to ruin this tree, so I just popped it off. Luckily, I got lucky on that one though. It floated back to the surface.
That's because UMA makes some of the best crankbaits on the market. Period.
Absolutely.
So, but that being said, we are just about getting to the end of our time here on Bass and Beer Radio, Tackle Talk Tuesdays. We have started what I'm going to call the crankbait series. There is so much juice and information to talk about with crankbaits. Today was shallow crankbaits. Next Tuesday is going to be episode 6, part 2 of our crankbaits, and we're going to get into the mid-depth crankbaits, and we're going to go through all of those shenanigans and give you guys all of that juice. So make sure next Tuesday you guys turn into Tackle Talk Tuesday on Bass and Beer Radio to discuss
Mid-depth crankbait.
mid-depth diving crankbait, shallow, mid-depth, and deep.
6 to 12 foot crankbaits. That's what we're considering our mid-depth range.
Okay. And don't miss that. Great follow-up on the shallows. And like I said multiple times in this episode, if you're not taking any of these crankbaits and utilizing them, you're missing fish. So check out some of these episodes. Take some of this information that we're going to give you guys to the bank and put fish in the boat with them. Appreciate you guys watching. Tune in again on Thursday
we will have live weigh-ins, and then Friday we will have our normal shenanigans. So we will see you guys then. Peace.